Welcome to I Struggle podcast with me, Mona Brun. On today's episode, I'm talking to Joff. Joff is a dating coach for women. He's helping women around the globe to find healthy and fulfilling relationship with his partner, Julia. Today, we're going to focus on early stages of dating and expectations, but also we're talking about limiting beliefs around relationships, about committed relationship and the right partner for us. But also we are talking about sex on first date, green and red flags of dating, and dating after pandemic. I think that you're going to find it very valuable today, and there's so many things that you can take out from this episode, and I'm very happy that I had opportunity to do it together with Joff. As always, I'm very grateful that you're here with me, that you're listening and supporting my podcast, and enjoy this beautiful episode. I would like to start from introducing yourself and telling me a bit who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, so my name is Joff, or that's at least my nickname, because it's my name is actually too hard to pronounce for people.
Mm-hmm.
But so my partner and I, Julia, we are dating coaches for women. So that's kind of what we do. We help single women, heal
Mm-hmm.
and essentially grow personally, so that they can attract a partner for life as well, right? Like someone who's worked with single women who are really serious about wanting to settle down and really wanting to find that love in their life. So that's essentially what we do.
Mm-hmm. Why you started doing it? What pushed you to be a dating and love coach for women's?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Well, so it's been a long journey. It definitely
Mm-hmm.
has, but it's essentially started with, so Julie and I, when we met, obviously we had some challenges in our relationship as well, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, once we got past that stage of having the dating challenges and all of that, and kind of settle into the relationship that we have now, we essentially, we would personally say that we have a pretty thriving and fulfilling relationship, right? Like we work very well together. And there came a point where we just kind of looked around and we saw, some of Julia's friends, and we saw some of my cousins and siblings and that sort of thing. And also when you just look at society as a whole, how unfortunately just how many people struggle with this concept of love. And unfortunately, it's making a lot of people unhappy as well. Like it's a source of unhappiness for a lot of people. And just considering that we had grown so much in this area and that we had this fulfilling relationship, right? And we felt like, well, absolutely, there's something here. Like people are struggling, we can absolutely share with them and help them achieve the same, because we've been through our own struggles as well. And,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's struggles are unique, but there are a lot of similarities in terms of what people are going through as well. And uh, also seeing how it's kind of crazy in today's society where literally, you're kind of expected to train for everything that you're doing in life, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to pursue a career, you get an
Mm-hmm.
education, right? You go to college, university. If you want to learn how to drive, you go to driving school, right? Like you have to get
Mm-hmm.
your license. But when it comes to like love, it's just like, or like if you want to get healthy, oftentimes you get a personal trainer and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to love and relationships, that's like the one area in life where everyone
And
kind of just assumes that,
yeah, that's
just
so
you'll get
easy.
it.
Like two people meet together and that's it. That's the end of the story. When you look around and when you talk
Yeah,
to people, when I talk to my
exactly.
friends, people like it's hard to find like people that are living in fulfilled relationships. Like most of the time you hear stories about being ghosted or being in toxic relationships or being unhappy in relationships, but being afraid to move on because we
Mhm.
don't know if we find the perfect one. What do you think is the biggest dating mistake, especially in the early stages of dating? Like what's the biggest mistake? What you've noticed so far?
Well, so it probably goes from both sides, but obviously we have more expertise from the women's side,
Mm-hmm.
because those are the ones that we work with. But we would say that one of the things that we noticed is just getting overly attached and invested too early in the dating process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because um, it's called dating, and dating is a process where you go to meet people and you get to know them, you make connections, and you kind of see whether you're compatible over time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's just so many people treating it as, you go on a date, and if you meet someone that you have a spark with or that you like, then it's like you're hoping to meet your soulmate, and that's it, right? And so it's easy to get very invested too quickly and create this projection of what the future is going to be like together very early on. And thus, because you've created this in your mind, it's easy to then go on and ignore a lot of the red flags, and maybe that you weren't as compatible as you actually thought, right? So that's definitely one of the big mistakes that we see. Also,
How to stop doing it? Because I used to do that as well. Like I would go on a date, be like, that might be the one.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very common. And of course, as you get to know a person, you will naturally form a connection. So there will be some sort of investment involved, right? Like, so you will get, feel like there's something there naturally, right? Like, so it's not something that you're necessarily just gonna stop doing. It's not that easy. However, of course, there are things that you can do to help you avoid it, right? In terms of the baseline is essentially just to when it comes to like your attitude of telling yourself that, like, if you have a longer term view on things, then it's easier to not get carried away with the initial sparks, right? Because one of the mistakes that we see a lot of women make is that they were like too heavily on this early chemistry, for example, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you meet someone, you have great chemistry, right? And like you get the butterflies, and it seems all like, oh, this is the person. However, chemistry is practically no indication, right? Like there's no correlation between having chemistry with someone and them being a good partner for you. Like there's literally no correlation. So you can have both, but they're not connected, right? Like you can have good chemistry with someone who turns out to be an awful partner, right? And so it's just being aware of those things and knowing that, if you have great chemistry, not allowing yourself to get carried away. You're sitting at home and you're constantly thinking about the person, and because we're doing this to ourselves most of the time, so we're painting this picture. So almost the relationship is kind of advancing in our heads before it's actually advancing into life, right? So just being mindful of that, and ultimately coming back to just like, if you focus on the here and now instead of focusing on the future, right? That is essentially the baseline of what you want to do to avoid getting too carried away, because there's so many things that can happen between where you are now in the dating process and 3 to 6 months to a year to 2 years. Like there are so many things that can happen. But if you just focus on being happy right now, taking care of yourself right now, and enjoying the relationship that you have right now, and being okay with, if it's not him, then there's going to be someone else, right? And if you have that attitude, because it's an attitude thing, right? Like, and if you're able to shift your mindset to that, then it's going to be a lot easier. Of course, you'll still be invested, right? Because you have a connection, but that's also a good thing. But you can kind of prolong that process and rather watch how he shows up for you and assess his character over time, rather than, you met someone you like and your head is gone, right?
I think it's like building a friendship. Like you focus on first doing something together, getting to know each other, and then you build the friendship. You don't fall for friendship immediately. You're not calling person that you just met your best friend. Like this is not how it works. Like you need to put in effort, time, attention, and you need to like share your values and just vibe together to be best friends. So I think that when I look at the relationships now, I look like at the foundation of the relationship. So I'm more focused on building that friendship first, to then maybe be in romantic relationship with that partner. I'm happy that you brought up early chemistry and love, because I think that the biggest misconception of dating is that people think if there's no spark on first date and no chemistry on the first date, they give up on the person. And I've heard that lots of times from my friends and people around, like if there's no chemistry, it's not the one. It's not the one that I should be dating with, which is not true, because first date might be very stressful for both sides, and we might not express ourselves fully as we are. So yeah, I think that's really worth it to go for another day if you like the person, if you like the personality. Like we should more focus on personalities instead of like our imagination of that person to be on the future. So it's really important to stay here and now in the present moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. I think that these days after lockdown, it's slightly more difficult for us to get back to social life and dating again. Do you have any advice now how to get over like social anxiety, or how to be gentle with ourselves to get back to dating?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And it's an important one in not only for dating, but also for so many things that we do, right? And I think the main thing to be aware of is just to be okay with the idea that it's normal to not be, super confident when you do something for the first time. Like everyone who's tried something for the first time would feel a little nervous, right? Like there
Yeah.
are fears coming up. There are, because you're not comfortable. Like confidence comes from being comfortable in a situation, like
Mm-hmm.
having certainty that you can handle it. Like that's
Yeah.
confidence. So of course, if you haven't been dating for a while, you're naturally going to not feel so confident doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you don't have those references to that gives you that confidence. And so it's just, being compassionate with yourself and understanding that first of all, it's absolutely normal, right, to do that. And just put away aside from the fact that even if you were used to dating, most of us will probably be nervous when they go on a date anyway,
Yeah.
right? So it's that added on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to approach it would just be to take it step by step and don't expect, right? Because it's a matter of what you assume is kind of the outcome or the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you can imagine if you go on a date and you think that the outcome, and you judge yourself, like your performance essentially, on whether he likes you or not, or
Yeah.
whether it's a good date, like whatever you classify as a good date. Like that's a lot more pressure,
Mm-hmm.
because you're coming in there putting that pressure on yourself. Like, oh, I have to show up as my best self, because if he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like me, then it was a bad date. And and
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
kind of can talk yourself into a lot of doubt and anxiety that way. But what if you change the perceived goal or the outcome that you're looking for? So instead of the outcome being it has to be a good date,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of those things will be out of your control anyway. You don't know how he's going to show up, right?
Absolutely.
So a lot of those things are just out of your control. So if instead, what if the goal is just to show up and be nice, right? What if the goal is just to find one thing that you can look back on and say, like, I enjoyed this one moment in the date?
Oh, wow.
What if the goal
Yeah.
was just to show up and be present, right? And listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can choose as humans, we can choose what we focus on. We can choose what we you know whether we what the outcome for any given situation should be for us.
Mm.
So, and depending on, and you can set a low bar essentially, thus making you more likely that you're going to hit it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you feel good. And if you feel good, you start to gain confidence that you can actually go date because you're hitting your quote unquote goals.
That's such a good advice. That's an amazing advice, really. Like I remember going on the date and being focused on performance, exactly performance, to be focused
Mm-hmm.
on like looking good, acting good, saying things that other person would enjoy. Instead of like just showing up. Showing up is already enough. Like going out for a date is already enough, because it
Mm-hmm.
takes so much effort to put yourself out there, possibly like out of your comfort zone as well. So you're such a brilliant
Mm-hmm.
advice. Thank you so much. I think that's
You're
literally
welcome.
life-changing advice.
That's great.
What's
Also, it's kind of
oh,
worth remembering that the other person is surely nervous too, right?
absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
also human.
Hmm.
They're meeting you. Like, you want to think about it, it's like they're also there. Like, the reason they are on the date is because They want to meet a beautiful woman that they can have a nice talk to, and it's a very good time when you come to realize that